Copilot and Codespaces, or like I didn't build them, but I talked a lot about them and helped people understand how to use them. And before that, I worked as a software engineer at other startups, and I kind of got my start by starting off at a coding boot camp, got a job, and then started learning to code at, like, or not started learning to code, but got a job, and then also went ahead and got my degree. So that's really it. I just like talking about code and helping developers feel empowered.
Wonderful. So, okay, so I went through your website and all the blog posts that you've done. So you've done quite a lot, and so and you have a great writing style. I loved how there's one where you have it's like a story about the girl who is learning about Web 5, right? It's web, and it's like written in like a story fashion, and it made it really interesting because I had no idea going into the article what it was about, and it was engaging. So, how do you how did you find your voice? Like, how do you know how to convey yourself whatever you're doing writing? And because you have different types, right? You have some that are more story based, and then you have some that are more I guess not, they're factual, they're more tech based, but there's still like definitely a a vibe. Like you could tell it's you whatever you're writing. So how did you figure out how to do that?
That's a really good question. And I was excited to be on this show because I'm like, this is gonna make me think about this. I always liked writing, even when I was like in high school. But I always approach stuff and like speak writing in the way I speak almost. But obviously, like sometimes I like slang and all that. So I'll remove the slang, but I'll just type in the way that I would think or say things because that's like not like, oh man, I have to like pretend to be this type of person, if that makes any sense. But sometimes in deciding is this going to be like a more creative or more like professional type of story or guide, I actually use this. There's this let me see the time. This was a I'm gonna post it in the chat. This was a blog post that Kurt Temple shared with me that he wrote, and he basically talks about like first you gotta understand like who's your audience for that particular blog post, and then he showed me. I thought it would be in here. Let me see if I can find it. But there's basically like this quadrant of like what type of blog post or what type of written content is going to be. Where it might be like this is going to be a tutorial, and the tutorial will be something that's like okay, people are easily just going to be able to copy and paste these particular like lines. They may not read every single thing. You might just do copy paste and a small explanation. Then there might be a guide that would be like more explanation. Then there might be like there's all these different types. I hope I can find it. So let me see types of like documentation. I don't know. But that kind of helps set the stage for me when I'm like before I write and I think about like what's the goal, who I want this to. So sometimes if I want it to reach maybe a more beginner developer, I might be like, all right, I'm gonna like do a little bit more explanation for them. If I want this to be more of like a, we're just talking about the idea of this, but not necessarily being to build, like just so they can understand, like, how does this work behind the scenes? I might take a different approach. And then that like story approach that I took was just something I was experimenting with, where I know a lot of people, they hear Web 5, they're like, Web 3 has like mixed reaction. So as soon as they hear Web 5, sometimes people are like, I don't know if I want to read it, or is this just Web 3? So I wanted something that will like pull people in, and then also give them like a more practical explanation so that they'll be able to like understand what this is, because it's hard to envision it if this is a technology that really hasn't been implemented in real life yet.
Yeah, that does
Okay,
make
look,
sense. No, and it leads me to my next question because when you're going through all of this and you're building out these explanations, how are you, what is your process as far as like actually creating that post or that story? Are you making outlines? Are you how are you planning? Because for me, one of the things that I have a specific thing that I'm trying to blog about that I'm still trying to figure out because I have all of these like thoughts in my head and I don't feel like I can get them into a cohesive like pattern or a cohesive order in order to like put my thoughts down in a way that I want to convey them. So what is your process when you have like this big thing that you're talking about? Nobody's heard of it, right? Like so how are you organizing your thoughts and putting them before you put them down actually in and publish them as a blog?
Yeah, I mean, first off, one thing to think about is like, I think sometimes when people approach blogging about a technical concept, they want to cover the entire concept. And like, I would say that's like a difficult and maybe even wrong approach. Like, let's say I'm like, oh, I want to blog about React, but then that makes me like overwhelmed. Like, there's so much stuff to cover in React. Which ones do I do? So I I have to like narrow it down or say, okay, this might be a series, like maybe how to use hooks in React. And then I can get even smaller and be like, okay, actually how to use views effect in React. And then I figure out, do I want to do this, like I said earlier, for a beginner, an intermediate person, or an advanced person? Because if I try to do it for every single person, then it becomes like it's not for anybody, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Because
no, yeah.
yeah, it's like whoa. So I'll do that first, and I'll figure out like kind of what I was mentioning before. Is this going to be a tutorial for them, or is this just something that they can overall just get a better understanding of how it works in all in all? So if it's going to be something like a tutorial, I usually do like, okay, my introduction is going to be a hook and a brief introduction of the topic. Then I'll have like these these step by step, like the body on like, okay, step one, here's how you do this, step two, here's how you do this. But if it's more like an explanation type or like a leadership type, might do like, okay, again, and then I might be like, hey, I have these three supporting points or thought leadership opinions or something like that that supports the points that I had earlier, and I'll go like one, two, three in the body. I kind of approach it like I don't know if you remember like in high school where they talk about like how to write an essay. I kind of just approach it like that, like intro, body, conclusion, and I try to make sure like I'm narrowed into a specific focus. Because if I don't do that, it's going to be a lot. Like it's going to be a long blog post that nobody wants to read. I get tired of writing, and a beginner is confused. An advanced person's like, this is too beginner for me. So it's like narrowing down as much as possible.
Okay, and then when you talked about a you talked about some if I keep going and I don't narrow it down, it might be a long blog. So is there a like a set amount of words that you're trying to aim for each blog post, or is there like a cutoff to how many words you're willing to write in a blog post?
That's a good question. Okay, I don't I don't really think I do. I will say I'm on the and people say they can't hear me. Let me know if you still can't hear me.
I think that you're okay
But
now, but yes, let us know, please.
cool. I don't have like a set amount, and I think oftentimes I'm probably on the more wordy side with blog posts, but at the end of the day, I don't want it to be something that you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and you're like, all right, we're done here. I don't know if I have like a specific limit in my mind, but I just keep it to like, huh, how do I say this? I'm not sure, but I'm like, I want to keep it to that specific topic. Once I start going off track, and I'm like, oh, but did you also know this little side note or something like that? I'm like, no, take that out the blog post. This just needs to be like about this. And if I have that little side note or whatever, that's probably a different blog.
Okay, okay, interesting. So one of the things that I've read because I stalked your blogs while we were getting ready, and so I'm going to share a couple in the chat here in just a second. Um, but how do you like if you're writing a topic, say you go with React, right? We've talked you're going to write about hooks and then you're going to write about the use effect next, but then you get to like a part of the use effect that you really aren't like 100% confident in, like you don't even necessarily know the answer to this particular thing that you think you're going to write about. How do you write for those situations, or do you say, oh, I don't know this part and I'll come back to it, or do you try to write and then if somebody tells you you're wrong, you go and edit that post and then with that correct information after you've learned that you're incorrect? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think a mixture of situations have happened. I don't For me, I don't really write about things that I don't know, but maybe I'll try to learn it first to be able to write about it, if that makes any sense. So if I'm like, I don't know how use effect works, maybe I'll at least learn enough that I can write something about it. Like I don't need to go into like super in depth, but I'm like, here, use effect basically will show this data once everything's rendered. Maybe I'll keep it plain and simple. But there have been times where people have corrected me and they've been like, that's not how this works. And then I would be like, oh, okay, my bad, thank you. And I'll just like update it. Because I never approach writing as like, oh, I'm an expert. It's like, oh, this is what I learned. And I'm just showing you what I just learned. And if you're like, wait, you learned it wrong, then it is what it is.
Okay. Um, what about like getting over, so one of the things that I suffer from is anxiety, right? So like even like doing these streams has been it's been like it's opened a different door for me. Like like yesterday I did a stream and it was the worst stream I've done. I was not feeling well
Mhm.
and then like I just wasn't feeling it, right? And so I woke up today and I was like, yes, I actually feel good today. Like I'm excited, like this is good, but like I did it anyways, and so when it comes to that, it like there is a fear of putting yourself out there, whether it be blogging, whether it be doing these videos, whether it be tweeting for some people, at least for me when I first started. So how do you get over that initial, and of course once you've done something so many times, it becomes more natural and it's not as scary, right? Like it's scary when when you first get started for a lot of things. But how do you overcome that, or how did you overcome that when you first started doing the content creation and blogging? Like, did you deal with that? And if so, what were the steps that you took to just do it and get it over with? And how do you feel now that if you dealt with that?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I even have a blog post. This is not necessarily about like written content creation, but about like how I used to be like really afraid of public speaking. Or like I don't know, every time I talk, my voice would be so shaky, and it would be like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. Um, but I think kind of what you said, practicing as much as possible. So just like continuing to put myself out there until I became like a little bit more desensitized to it. Even like I've done Twitch streams even recently where I'm like coding and like nothing's working, and on the inside I'm like shaking and I'm like, oh, nothing's working, but like so I still have that feeling, but I think just practicing, and I think I still try to go with like I'm learning. Like I try to remind people that even in the blog post, like I think when I start feeling more nervous is because I try to position myself as an expert, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, people are expecting me to know what I'm doing. But I'm like, listen, guys, this is just me learning, and you can learn with me too. And that like lowers the barrier in my head for myself. And like sometimes other things would do, and I should do this more often, is like show people show people like practice, right? Like whether it's a public speaking talk or like a blog post, show somebody else. So like sometimes I would like show somebody who knows nothing about code, or I will show somebody who is an expert, or I will show like the target audience, and then that will help me to get feedback and confidence that okay, this is hitting or this isn't hitting. But I don't do this as often as I should because I feel like it a lot of time and I have no patience and I just want to press publish. But like if people get mad at me in the comments, I just like this is a learning experience. I can do this one better in the future. But I kind of just go with like a delusional mindset, and I'm like, F it, like, we're just gonna do it.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I have a couple of follow-up questions. So, um, how you talked about, you want to hurry up and push publish. How often do you blog? Do you have a goal? Like I'm gonna write one blog a week, and if so, how do you determine what your goal is gonna be for that?
Interesting. I think I used to have more of a goal when I worked at GitHub. because I think there was like more of a emphasis for the team to like be doing more content creations. So I'll be like, all
Interesting.
right, I'm gonna put out a blog each week. That's gonna be like my contribution, and then maybe sometimes I should do like once a month. I'll do like a DevRel post. Um, I don't really know how I set my goals. I'm very haphazard to be honest. So I'm not the best with consistency. I know one time I tried to do like a series, like a 28-day blog series, and I like fell off of that. But I kind of try to not put like pressure on myself, and I'll like write if I feel excited or inspired to, rather than be like, if I don't write tomorrow, I'm in trouble.
Okay, and then sorry, I'm asking all the questions of I have a lot, I have a lot. Like I wrote down so many. When we talked about creative process, we talked about like finding your voice, like and like just writing and how you convey yourself and how you either use patterns or I mean you use stories or and you determine the level of the reader. Do you have, and this is going to be kind of a hard question for me to ask, but do you have like, are there patterns in the way that you lay out your words? For example, like when you're writing, is there like a specific formula for a sentence that you use whenever you're writing your posts to help you like have a specific voice?
Interesting. I don't think so. I don't maybe I do it and I don't think about it. The only like pattern I have is like the like okay, I'm gonna do an intro, body, whatever. But I don't really have a pattern for my sentence structure. I will literally write like how I'm talking right now. Like you literally write. I don't have a pattern for sentence structure. So the way I try to write is like not thinking about it as much as possible. Like I will like write as much as possible as I can think on the page, and then I'll go back and edit it and be like, ugh, this sounded ugly or whatever. But I'm not, when I overthink something, that makes me take longer, that makes me not even be able to press publish. So I'm like, I just let it like free flow, stream of consciousness, and then I'll go back and be like, yo, I missed period. I mean, if people look at my blog post now, they'll see like there's so many typos. So
You still have it.
part of
Do you go back and you like you'll edit them later if somebody points it out, or you just like, nah, I don't care.
mixture of both. Like I'll
Okay.
edit them after I did my stream of consciousness, and then I'll press publish. But sometimes there's still a ton of typos that I did not notice, and then someone will comment and be like, "This is missing a comma or whatever." I'll be like, "Oh, okay, thank you."
That's funny. Okay. Do you use AI to write ever, or like at least help you formulate what you're going to write? Because I've seen a lot of back and forth on that recently, where some people are like, yeah, you use it and then like make it your style after, or no, I don't use it at all. So it's kind of, I don't want to say controversial, but it is like a touchy, like some people, people have strong opinions one way or the other, whether or not you should use AI whenever you're writing.
Yeah, I mean, I do sometimes, yes. Okay, I will say this, right? Like platforms like ChatGPT have a specific way of writing that is just like, I don't want to read this. To be honest, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, of course you said the word um surge or whatever. They always say like specific words. So I
Yeah.
would say like it's similar to coding. Like don't over rely on like ChatGPT or anything to write stuff for you, but sometimes I do use it within my process. For example, there's one blog post I wrote called Closing a Chapter at GitHub. It was just about like me leaving GitHub, and I couldn't think of a conclusion, so I just asked ChatGPT to write a conclusion. And then on in the note in the blog post, I was like, ChatGPT wrote this because I couldn't think of how to write a conclusion. So I'm like, I'm just pretty like open and vulnerable like that. And then there's other times like I might use ChatGPT to help me like brainstorm, kind of like you're saying, how should I structure this? I'll be like, hey, ChatGPT, I have this idea. How do you think that I can approach this? And sometimes I'll be like, okay, I like that. That's cute. And sometimes I'm like, that's horrible. Or sometimes I'll even say like, I'll have it write the whole blog post, and it'll piss me off so badly that I'll like write my own blog post. That's usually like when I'm like really stuck. I don't know what to write for this, but I want to write this. And then it'll just give me like the worst blog post I've ever seen. And I'm like, no, this is how I would write it. And that like motivates me enough to write it on my own. And then I guess if Grammarly is considered AI, I use that.
Yeah, that's what Clay 32 mentioned, if that's an AI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is obvious when Ryan and Ellie said it's obvious when the whole thing is written by AI. I don't know if you can see the
Yeah.
chat, Rizal. I can, so I'm sorry if you can't. Um,
I'm so bad at like reading and talking, so I'm like, oh yeah.
I know somebody was like, "Can you see us?" And I responded back, "Yes, but it's hard to multitask, and plus my keyboard is loud, and I'm trying to pay attention. And I'm really interested in everything that you have to say." Okay, so you talked about the fact that you really blogged mostly whenever you were at GitHub. Did you start blogging before GitHub, or was that really your first time when you got that you started blogging?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was my first time that I started seriously blogging. I think I had written two technical blog posts before GitHub,
Okay.
and I mean, before that, I had like my own little like personal blog. I always liked writing, so there was always something that I was going to be writing. But like at GitHub is when I like made myself like a structure. Like I'm going to be putting out like blog post a week, da 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 da. Yeah.
Okay, and then what doors have opened for you since you've started blogging or doing content creation in general? Like, what have you had opportunities that have opened? And if so, what are those opportunities that have opened?
Yeah, no, it definitely did. Literally, so let me tell you, like before I started or the first day at GitHub, I wrote a blog post about my first contribution to open source.
Okay.
Literally, that helped people to like be like, oh shoot, Roselle's gonna go work at GitHub, whatever. But on top of that, the conference organizer for All Things Open was like, can you give this blog post as a keynote? And then
Oh,
crazy, yeah. So
okay.
I did it virtually because I was scared of public speaking, but that's like an
And
example.
which blog post was that? You might have seen it, but I just heard somebody walk in the door. So I was, again, my brain went, so what blog post did you keynote?
I forget. It was like okay, it was something on the around the realm of like overcoming my fear of contributing to open source. Something
Oh, okay, I
I
know.
don't remember
I
the
think
exact.
I know which one you're talking about. Okay, that's really cool. Um,
Yeah.
I'll see if I can find it real quick. I already have your blog post. And results.
I think
Oh, go ahead.
I
Yo, you go ahead
no,
first.
go ahead,
Sorry.
sorry. I was what was I gonna say? Oh, I was just saying like in general, I think blogs helped people to kind of see. Oh, I found it and I posted it in the chat.
Yay. Okay.
Help people to see my mindset around code. Because, you know, like I could say that I could code and, you know, bring my see a little bit of code, but it helped people to be like, oh, shoot, Zelle's thinking deeply about this, or she has this different perspective. And I think it helped me
I
to gain a little bit more respect.
I think that's a really cool point that you made because, so I just started streaming. This is obviously, I talked to you about it before. This is my first time doing another stream with another person. So again, thank you so much. I told Rizal, everybody, I was like, I fangirled when she said she would talk to me on Twitch. Like I was so excited. Um, so, um, when I've been streaming, like yesterday I said it was a really bad day for me. And then just like the couple of times I've done it, you know, you're putting yourself out there in this live environment where other people that you don't know can come in, they can watch you, they can say whatever they want to say, and you know, you can block them. And I luckily have not have had anybody mean in the streams yet, but that could happen, right? And so like it feels like my IQ goes down like 20 to 30 points. Even whenever like, you know, unless if I'm pair programming with somebody that I'm really comfortable with, then I can get into like that flow state. But like if I am feeling like there's going to be any type of judgment or just like not even like criticism necessarily, but just if I feel like not comfortable with that person 100%, it just makes me like stress internally, and so I feel like dumber. And so I've noticed like when I'm streaming, like there's been times where something that would maybe take me 15 minutes to figure out myself has taken me like 45 minutes because you know there's just that fear in the back of my head that there's these people watching. They might being nice about it, but like they might think I don't know what I'm doing. And so I like that you said that blogging makes you seem get a little bit more respect and see what your mind is thinking, because yeah, when you put it into words, you can put it in a different way that shows your expertise without having to show somebody like live streaming, where you can show how your knowledge without having to take it make people let people watch you while you're doing it at the same time. And then even if they are, it probably builds up your confidence there too, because you're blogging about it. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. Live streaming, I'm so bad at it. And anybody watching the code, it looks like I don't know how to code at all.
Yes, that's how I felt the past couple of times, but it's okay. And it's one of those things too. It's just another format, and you have to get better at it by practice. Um, I really don't like have any other questions other than, let me see, I'm just making sure. You know what? I didn't ask this one, and I've already read one of the blogs that you did, but I'm going to ask it just for everybody in the audience. How do you determine a topic to blog about?
Oh shoot, I forget how I do that. I think I usually have like a list, right, of like things that I'm like, oh shoot, I should blog about this, and then I just write it down in my like Apple Notes because I know I'll forget, so I'll just write it down, and then I'll look through when I'm like, oh, I need to blog. I'll look through my list if I can't think of anything, and if nothing's at the like top of my mind, then I'll be like, oh, I'll just pick something from here. Normally, I'll have something that I'm really feeling passionate and excited about writing this, so I'll choose that forward first. Or sometimes I'm like, I know my job would want me to blog about this because this is what we are pushing today or this week or whatever. So that's how I'll make the choice. If
So
that made any sense.
yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so do you like just have this like time where you're like, I'm bored. I think I'm gonna blog right now, because you just said I'll pull out a list and I'll decide. So like, do you just like you're just like, I feel like writing. I'm just gonna write. I'm gonna pick something from my list. Or is there something that sparks you to like want to write a blog post? Because I am not that type of person who's like, oh, I just feel like I'm gonna write something right now. I maybe I've done it like once or twice, but that's just not something that I've ever experienced.
Yeah, I maybe both. Sometimes I think also, I mean, part of my motivation is I get paid to create content, so there's gonna be that. Oh, I found out what I should do to help keep my job. But yeah, I think it can be a mixture of, man, I haven't put out a blog post in a while. I do want to like put something out, or it could be I'm in a meeting and they're like, we need to talk about this. We want to expand it, and I'm like, I need to write a blog post. Or sometimes I have like it's a period of like I'm being structured, and once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever, I need to write a blog post, and I'm like, this is around the time that I'll do it. So it's really a mixture, but mostly I have the, I guess, privilege of I like writing a lot. Paid to do it, so yeah.
Awesome. And then what advice would you give to anybody that is looking to get into blogging, or looking to get better at it if they've already started?
Yeah. To get into blogging, I would say, don't overthink it. You don't have to be an expert. It doesn't have to be something that no one's ever blogged about before. The way that you approach it might be different than the way that someone else will approach it. And whoever reads it might be like, yo, I really like the way that Sarah described it. But Rizal, the way she described it was really confusing for me. And then if you want to like improve, I guess, is just continue to keep writing more, read other people's stuff. I feel like reading helps me to improve as a writer, and, gather feedback when you can. Like
Okay.
when I had more to, yeah,
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you finish your thought. I have a question when you're done. When you're done with your thought.
When I had more time, I would be like, "Hey, person that just graduated out of code boot camp, want to read this?" And then get feedback. That's all I was gonna say. Oh, also, I think I will have to leave a little soon.
Okay, no worries. We'll wrap this up in just a second. So, okay, can I ask two more questions? Or is okay, cool.
Yeah,
All right. So, um, how do you deal with reading, keeping up on track of content, like other people's content? Because this is going to sound, I don't want to say it sound bad, but for me, I'm a mom, I have kids, I'm trying to work, and if sometimes, like right now, I'm kind of in a down season of my work, so I have more time to focus on other people's content, but I don't have that all the time. And, trying to content create and keeping up with other people's content, it can pretty much take like a full time job worth of time. Because, you have all these awesome people that you're trying to support, and it's just so hard and spread yourself, or I can personally spread myself thin so easily. And then I end up like feeling like demotivated because I just can't do it and then keep up with everybody else and then also create my own content. So how do you manage that, or do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I feel like the tech industry is always like, you gotta do everything. I don't really, I mean, like you said, I'm a content creator just like you are, and I don't really always have time to keep up with everybody's content. But sometimes I might bookmark or save some content that I've seen, and when I get to it, I get to it. I'll be like, oh, cool, let me read this. But I don't put the pressure on myself that I need to be reading this amount of time a day or whatever. Sometimes I miss people's stuff. I'll retweet it as like a way of support, or I'll save it so I can look at it later on. But if I don't get a chance, I don't get a chance because I feel like I need to do other things in life, like hang out.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this is my last question, then we can wrap up. What blogging platform are you using? Are you using Hashnode, and where are you publishing your blogs to other than your website?
Yeah. Yeah, I use Hashnode. That's the blackgirlbites.dev.
Okay.
I just like own my domain, and I use dev.to. And I just published the both.
Oh,
I
okay.
have better, I have more reaction on or engagement on dev.to, but I like passion.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your blogging wisdom. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed talking to you. I would love to like have you on again and do this again with like different topics or questions after I've blogged a few times, or if that's okay and you have the time. But thank you so much. Do you have any last words before we end the stream?
I would just say this was really fun, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much, Roselle. It's been really great talking to you. And we'll go ahead and end the stream now. But thank you so much for attending, everybody. This has been a really good conversation. I took a lot of notes, and I'm excited to implement them here in the next little bit. Have a
Yeah,
happy
me too.
Friday. Bye, everybody.